So what you're telling me is that this world has magic and you can talk and people can understand you. I mean, you work for the bad guys, but when Boots talks, they don't believe her? Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin' Movies double feature. As always, I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about Dora and the Lost City of Gold, plus scary stories to tell in the dark. Before I continue, I want to let you guys know I will dance around spoilers as much as I can. That being said, there is a few things that I'm going to have to talk about, and it might be considered a bit of spoilerage. The first movie we're going to be talking about is Dora and the Lost City of Gold. Dora the Explorer, the movie. What this movie is about, it starts off with Dora as a kid, and we learn that her imagination is basically the old cartoon, where she talks to an imaginary audience, and her and Diego both have animal friends. Diego's his cheetah or whatever it was he had is a stuffed animal, and Dora has Boots, but Boots is a real monkey. That being said, even though she says Boots can talk, Boots can't talk, and they show them trying to thwart Swiper in their imagination, and that actually comes into play later, which is kind of an odd part of the movie. Diego moves away to the city, and then the movie jumps ahead 10 years, and we see that Dora is still living in the jungle with her parents as they search for the lost city of gold, and she doesn't know anybody, but she's just extremely optimistic, and she's still running around the jungle with a camera, and she's talking to the camera like it's the audience, and she's being chased by animals and all that stuff. Well, anyway, her parents make a big discovery about the lost city of gold, but instead of taking Dora, who got in a little bit of trouble and kind of went off on her own and shouldn't have, they make her go to the city to live with Diego and his parents while they go look for the lost city of gold. So she has to start basically a real life for a bit, and then it comes to find out that some bad guys are on the trail of the lost city of gold as well, and they may or may not have kidnapped Dora's parents. They try to kidnap Dora and her friends, and they end up in the jungle, and of course that's where Dora is in her element, and they have to find the parents and the lost city of gold. This movie, when I first saw the trailer, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me when you see this trailer, it looks awful. Now, Isabella Moner is probably, I even joked back in the day, once I heard that Michael Bay was a producer on this, and I don't know if he still is. As far as I know, he still is. That was going to be his Dora, and sure enough, it was. And really, there's nobody else known like actress that I know right now that could play Dora. Now, if they were going for the younger Dora, that's different, but since they're going for this teenage Dora, I couldn't think of anybody else, and really, she's really good. If you've seen the second Sicario movie, the girl's gonna be great. If she sticks to doing movies like Sicario, I think she's gonna turn out to be a really good actress, so you couldn't have gotten better for this, I don't think. That being said, as much as I thought she did good in this movie, her character's a little too naive. The optimism's fine. The optimism works with the character because you would think Dora would be positive the entire time, or at least the majority of the time. But her being so naive was kind of, I don't know. I would think that she would have asked her parents some questions growing up. But she was just, she has this kind of innocence of a child thing, and the way she talks, I get that the awkwardness and everything, and that works because the way she talks to people. Diego has a crush on another girl in this group, or the other girl in the group, and Dora, instead of saying you like her, she says, she starts talking about like mating habits and things like that, and the awkwardness works, but just her being a little too naive and a little uninformed about some things, I thought was a little awkward. When it comes to the plot, it's fine. It's nothing real special, but it's first of all, there's parts that just straight up borrow from other movies. I mean, it doesn't get too scary, but a lot of the Lost City of Gold stuff feels like Indiana Jones and Last Crusade. Totally fine with that, by the way. It's just there's parts where, I won't say it steals from Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, but let's just say it borrows heavily from it. But the rest of the adventure stuff, the movie really, for me, didn't really get started until they hit the jungle. The teenager stuff, it's just typical teenager stuff. You've got the group of kids, you got Diego is embarrassed by Dora because, she's different. The other girl, the one that Diego has a crush on, she's like the overly smart girl, but she's kind of awkward. She kind of just needs to open up and accept other people, and not be a little so full of herself. And then there's the other awkward kid. They're kind of the outcasts. So it's just that kind of story. It's like, they're going to have to become friends and trust each other, and then they're good together, right? And they embrace their awkwardness in the end. So that's the kind of story you're going to get there. That stuff's fine. It doesn't take too much of the movie. So, I'm kind of glad they move it through the jungle pretty quick. The jungle stuff just feels like somewhat typical adventure, like adventure movie stuff. They have to get through they have to get to different places and find clues, and they end up finding things that could be traps and jungle puzzles and the such. That part also, though, there's parts like you've probably seen the trailer, the quicksand part. That kind of humor, I don't know, it just didn't fit this movie for me. Where it's like they're lifting their feet up in the quicksand, it's making fart noises. It wasn't that necessary. Let's just put it that way. Whenever it comes to the bad guys are very generic. You also know that who the bad guys are. We'll put it that way. It's real obvious. And then going back to the story, there's parts of this movie that get really weird, because they find this trail along the way that has these big flowers, and they end up having hallucinogenic properties, which turns this movie into the cartoon. And that it's real short, but that's where you get to see Backpack and the map, and it's actually voiced by the people that voiced it in the cartoons, which is kind of funny. But they're basically Dora and Diego and the crew are seeing things after going through these plants, and they're seeing it as a cartoon. The map's like, come this way, I'm the map. They're doing I'm the map and I'm the backpack delicioso and all that stuff. I can't remember what all they did, but it's the cartoon basically. So they do that stuff as well. So the movie kind of takes a fever dream break. Now, the one thing I really want to talk about is the movie's rules. The movie talks about reality a little bit. At the first we see Boots. Dora has put boots on him, and the parents are like, don't dress him. He's a wild monkey, right? But fine, okay. But then, so, and she also mentions that she can talk to Boots, and she can talk to Boots. She can understand his noises and everything, and he understands her. But okay, this is where it gets real confusing, because the movie's rules say that animals can't talk, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the bad guys have Swiper, and Swiper talks, and they understand him. and he understands them. And I mean, it's Benicio del Toro, and he does the oh man and things like that. Um, and here's the crazy part, though. First of all, that's crazy that you've got this, the walking, talking animal, and everyone understands him, including Dora and the crew. Yet later in the movie, when Boots does finally talk, it's weird too. He goes in this like trance, and he's just all of a sudden, you have a talking Boots, and it's everyone's favorite recent superhero, Danny Trejo. And because Boots just kind of goes, and then he starts talking like like Danny Trejo. And you're just like, wait a minute, that came out of nowhere. It's honestly out of character for Boots, but just hearing Danny Trejo's voice coming from Boots was kind of funny. But then, okay, again, they've heard Swiper, they've seen the way Swiper moves. He's basically a human fox. And she says, Boots just talked. And they're like, yeah, right. The other kid's like, yeah, right. So that was kind of weird. It's like you've seen a walking, talking fox, and she tries to tell you the monkey talked, and that's unbelievable. I mean, the movie has parts that are almost straight up magic, and you don't believe that the monkey can talk. So that was kind of funny and weird. The movie overall, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's an alright adventure. It's a little messy. I honestly think fans of the show, the ones that grew up with it, might enjoy it more than kids will now. It's more of a teenager movie. While not as like say vulgar or anything, it reminds me of like what they did for The Tick on Amazon, where it's for those fans that they grew up with it and now they're wanting to see what happened to those characters now. Like where The Tick, I mean, granted, The Tick started over, but they were showing you, it's like, well, you were a fan of this show. Well, here's the more adult version of it. Well, this one, you may have grown up with the Dora show, but it's a more teenage version of it. Not a perfect movie. I'm not going to call it a great movie. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Is it a rush to the theater to go see type movie? No. The performances are fine. Isabella Moner is probably your best choice that you could get for the part. So I don't think they did wrong there. But the movie is a little messy. Its rules are a little unclear. It's fun at parts, and then at parts it's a little too silly. So for me, I would call it a rental at best. The next movie I'm going to be talking about is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is based on the popular book series. I have not read the series, so I don't know much about it. This movie is, the screenplay anyway, is written by Guillermo del Toro. And the movie definitely has a Guillermo del Toro movie feel to it, even though he is not the director. And I'm not even going to try to... Okay, I'll try to pronounce the director's name. Andre Ovredal, I guess is how you pronounce the guy's name. I'm probably wrong. If I am, you can correct me in the comments. Just be gentle. This movie is set in 1968, around the time of the presidential election. And it's about a group of friends who aren't the most popular kids. And on Halloween, they decide to get their revenge on one of the school bullies. And this ends up leading them first to the drive-in theater, where they meet a mysterious kid that may or may not be living in his car. And then also this leads them, because this kid and the main girl kind of have both have an interest in weird and scary things. This leads them to the town's haunted house, and they go and investigate it. And they end up finding this book that has these stories in it that have different victims. And the bully ends up locking them in the house, but something lets them out. later, and the girl takes the book, and then it turns out by taking the book they set off something that may or may not be evil. Okay, first and foremost, I didn't know anything about this going in other than what I saw in the trailer. And while this movie, I think it's weird enough and it's creepy enough and interesting enough to keep you going through the whole movie, and it's a decent watch. There's parts of the movie that I felt were a little too silly, and it kind of takes you out of the movie just a little bit. And mainly it's one character that does this, and then also some of the designs of some of the creepy things that are happening. Now, you've seen the trailer, you've seen the Scarecrow Harold and some of the other creatures. I don't remember their names. The woman looking for whoever took her toe and things like that. The movie's creepy enough, and I enjoyed this movie, so don't get me wrong. Anything I say about this movie that I didn't like, it doesn't ruin the film. But I feel like one character being silly most of the time, and I know there's times where having humor in scary situations is the way that some people deal with it, but some of the humor felt too scripted. It's just you're wanting the tension to build, and this character just keeps cracking jokes, and you're just like, come on, man, enough's enough. And that was the character of Chuck. He's one of the two boys of the group of three. The girl and the other two boys. So when it comes to like the atmosphere of this movie, it's very Del Toro. And just the creature design and everything else, you can definitely tell that Del Toro had his hands in on this one. From what I understand, he's a fan of the series, so it definitely fits. Some of the creature design, like the Herald design, is cool. There's the lady in the red room. I don't remember what the official name was for that one or anything. The lady in the red room just looks almost silly. That being said, that part is creepy because it's very claustrophobic, and it works. The part with Harold is very good when it comes to the atmosphere. The part with the lady looking for her toe it's gross. It's effective, but it's a little silly. That being said, the whole time, most of the characters in this movie are taking everything pretty serious, and the movie gets pretty dark, especially for a PG-13 movie. I was really surprised that the movie had some guts, technically had some guts, because remember, there's other books, so there's more stories, and I believe it's based on these characters. At least that's where the movie is pointing in that direction. But the movie did have the guts to, a lot of PG-13 horror movies they'll take out the ones you want to see go, right? The part with Harold, especially. I mean, Harold deals with the school bullying. Though, yes, this kid's getting offed. It's a character you can't stand. Who knows what kind of home problem he has, or they don't really touch on that, but he's just not a good kid. And he does a lot of bad things, and you kind of just want to see him get his comeuppance. That being said, he gets it pretty bad, and that's how things kind of start. But a lot of movies don't have the guts to take out main characters or take out like the big supporting characters or whatever. This movie has the guts. It takes out plenty of people, and I give it credit for that. The way that the story goes, the way that the movie's tale goes, is that, I mean, they make the silly line of you don't read the book reads you. But in a way, that's, even though the line's kind of silly, it works because it's basically saying that the book finds your worst fears and uses it against you. Like one of the kids has these bad dreams and it uses that against him. Another kid, like with the Harold thing, the kid hates that scarecrow, but the scarecrow is what comes after him, and things like that. And it really works for me. When it comes to the overall story, though, I liked that this movie wasn't just scary thing comes after kids must stop it. Now, that is part of the plot, don't get me wrong. That being said, the story behind what is coming after them is interesting, and it can lead to more movies. The stuff that's surrounding the kids themselves, when it pertains to like the Vietnam War, there's a lot of talk about the Vietnam War, and they keep showing Nixon being elected in the office and things like that. So there's more going on in the story than just it's creepy thing coming after kids. So I really like that there was more to this world, and they can play into more of that in future movies if they do get to do more movies, which again, they teased it, but will there be more movies? I don't know. It just depends on how this movie does at the box office. I think if this movie didn't have Guillermo del Toro attached, it probably wouldn't have been as interesting, because I think the creature work may not have been up to par. Where, like I said, even the creatures that weren't the scariest, they were still weird and creepy. It's, like I said, the one in the red room, the big lady or whatever it was called, looked silly. The look on its face is really silly, but then you see what it does, and it's just it's unnerving. That part's very claustrophobic. But anyway, if you're a fan of horror movies, and I'm not talking like blood and guts horror, I'm talking about just like slow burn scares, and because a lot of people might be like, well, it's like bloodless and all that, but like, again, the movie doesn't hold back when it comes to characters and things like that, and I appreciate that. But it may not be for every horror fan. I thought it was interesting enough. Again, there was parts that were a little too silly for me, and that kind of knocked it down a few pegs, but for the most part, especially if you're a fan of Guillermo del Toro, the look of a Guillermo del Toro film, you'll definitely want to check this one out. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin' Movies Double Feature. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about Dora and the Lost City of Gold, or scary stories to tell in the dark, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, I'm your host, the Real Geno, Geno Reynolds. See you later.